What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Jenks Island Podcast, the only podcast where you get your takes from a washed-up Division III corner. And in today's episode, we're going to break down the Thanksgiving week slate of NFL games. Last week, the early morning slate was trash at the beginning, and it got a little bit better towards the end. Afternoon games were all right, nothing crazy. And then the primetime games are both pretty solid. So before we break down this week's picks, we'll just do a quick recap of the leaders for our pick'em group. At number 1 right now, we got my cousin's Micro Penix. He was second, and then the first leader actually fell all the way down to 1 second. He fell all the way down to 11th because he forgot his picks this prior week, which gotta feel bad for the guy. That one sucks. Hammer moved all the way up to second with that at 117 and 62. I'm at 113 and 66, tied for 5th. And Ty, I believe you're at 112 wins, if I do recall correctly. So you would be at 7th, technically. So those are our records. All these guys are really competing still. Even the guy that forgot all of his picks is somehow still relatively close in the rankings. So this week is a big week for picks. Real quick, before we also get into this week's, Packers had a huge game. The Broncos had a game that went well for them. Hammer, what were your thoughts on the Packers beating the 49ers? You were there at the stadium at Lambeau Field. I bet you were going nuts, even though you're beating up a injured 49ers team.
Yeah, it was a blast. So now I'm not bad luck. I can go to more Green Bay games. If I was 0-2, I would have been wraps. But yeah, they handled the business against a banged up team. You know, it's what good teams was supposed to do. You know, look like that, put that product on the field. They did. So it was a good time. Me and my mom had fun. So
Good. Ty, you guys had a solid game as well. Nothing too crazy, but you guys beat up on who you were supposed to beat up. So what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, division game, so it's always, going to be a little bit more competitive, but good to see them get like a double-digit win, a couple sacks with Zach Allen out, and Bo played well in the second half. Cortland Sutton kind of popped out. So it was good to see the second half rebound, because the first half was kind of slow. I think it was 9-10 going into the half, but good to see the second half rebound.
Yeah, I was let down by Antonio Pierce at the end there. I kind of wanted like a Brock Bowers touchdown, but he just, like, I don't know. They didn't throw him the ball, and then Antonio Pierce decided to just run the clock out and not kick a field goal, give him a shot. So poor coaching there. I didn't agree with whatever he was doing. Saints had a bye week, as you all know, but Darren Rizzi, we won the bye week pretty easily. So not too much to discuss. Anyways, getting right into our Thanksgiving Day games. A solid slate. I know this slate was looked down upon a few weeks ago, and then it got a little bit better. The Bears kind of have improved the last couple of weeks. The Giants and Cowboys are both back with quarterbacks, and then Dolphins their offense is starting to heat back up. So the first game of the slate is the Bears taking on the Lions. And this is a solid game. The Bears, their passing attack is starting to open up a little bit. Caleb Williams is starting to make plays that he made in college seem normal again in the NFL. Keenan Allen is finally coming to life in this offense, and DJ Moore did have a great game as well last week against the Vikings. So against a tough defense, they had a solid performance, and against this Lions team, they should be able to do similar, because the Lions defense is about, I would say, similar to the Vikings defense, a little bit less skilled all around. The Lions offense, though, as we all know, they have weapons everywhere. They can score on the run game, the passing game, from absolutely anyone. Jared Goff just needs to have a solid game, and I think they should be able to beat the Bears at home on Thanksgiving. I'm going to pick the Lions here in this one. Who do you guys got?
Yeah, I think, I agree with everything you said about, the way that these two teams are projecting. But, the Bears just play a lot of zone, and I think that'll be big for the Lions. I think Goff will be able to kind of pick that apart. Maybe big day for J-Mo and Amon-Ra. So I'm going to go with the Lions here too.
Hammer, who you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Lions, but I do think this is going to be a close game. I think the Bears always play the Lions, and especially Jared Goff, pretty tough. I saw like a stat 2 days ago on Twitter, like Jared Goff's numbers against the Bears over his career with the Lions, and it wasn't too pretty. So that defense definitely does have his number a little bit. So I think they're going to be able to slow him down a little bit. I think the line for this game is like 10.5. I don't think that happens.
Yeah, that's a little bit heavy.
You know what I mean? I think it's like a 6, maybe even like a 5-4 point game. But I'm going to take Detroit at home.
Yeah, I think I think it's a solid game for them to win at home and just prove that they are the dominant team in this division. Next, we got the Giants taking on the Cowboys. A big NFC East battle here between two backup quarterbacks. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think this will be interesting, right? Because now we get to see Drew Lock get his chance after he was kind of snubbed last week with DeVito starting, but DeVito's out, so we get Drew Lock, and then obviously Cooper Rush on the other side. Excuse me. Obviously, huge win last week for Dallas. Against the Commies, hanging on there late, even with the almost blunder of like returning the onside kick, and then Washington going to scoring, but they missed the extra point, and so just a crazy end of the game. But at the end of the day, they won the football game. Played really well. But on the flip side, right, I have a lot of confidence in Drew Lock. We've seen him come in some of these moments in the past, with Seattle with a lot of weapons there, and beat, a good team like Philly. So I think he's got some pretty good weapons here with Neighbors and Wandale. Let's see if they, let Tracy like kind of off the leash. I know like every time he kind of, messes up, they just bring Singletary in, or I don't know. They really haven't just let him like shine in the past couple weeks, it feels like. So, I'm just two bad teams, right? Like we kind of mentioned before, just, both struggling, both with backup quarterbacks. But I think when you compare the two, Drew Lock has the higher potential in a game like this. So I'm going to go with the Giants here just because I believe in Lock. And maybe that's me being a homer as him being a former Bronco. But, I've seen a lot of him, and his high moments are really high. His lows aren't, too low, but, he's a backup for a reason. But I'm going to go with the Giants.
Who do you got, Hammer?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Giants as well. Are you going with the Giants too?
I'll make my pick in a sec. I'll let you finish your thoughts.
I'm going with the Giants. I'm such a bad host. I saw another stat on Twitter later today. Oh, telling me the Giants are playing tomorrow. That's great. I saw another stat. It was like home teams on Thanksgiving, like they have a bad record the past 5 years. It's like 4-11 or something like that. So, I think this is the game where the away team comes in and gets it. I think the Giants, two not so good teams. And yeah, I like Drew Lock. He's shown the ability to just come into games like this and, make it his. So I'm gonna go with the Giants.
Yeah, I wanted to pick the Giants because I thought you both were going to pick like the Cowboys, or one of you guys was going to pick the Cowboys. And I think I'll stick with my pick. I think the Giants come into this one, and I think they can run the ball a solid amount. And that's kind of what the Commies didn't do last week. We saw them go away from the run, and the Cowboys defense is terrible at the run game. So I'm going to go with the Giants here as well. I like you guys' picks, and I think that Drew Lock should be able to win this one. Next, we got your Packers, Hammer, taking on the Dolphins in the Frozen Tundra. Snow game alert for this one. It's going to be like, I think, negative or not below 30s and possible snow. At least a couple days ago when I was looking at the radar. What are your thoughts on this one, Hammer?
Yeah, it's going to be like, 30s, 20s, no snow. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I think it's going to be high scoring. I think this could be a little bit of a trap game for Green Bay after being San Fran, a team that has really gotten you in the past. You beat them. Maybe you're looking ahead to next week against the Lions. Little trap game. Miami's playing really well. Just won 3 straight. Tua's lighting it up. Green Bay's going to be missing Jair too, so that does not help when you're going against Tyreek and Waddle. I'm going with my Packers, of course, because Jordan Love needs his turkey leg. He did not get it last year when he beat the Lions. So, that's been a lot of the talk in the locker room. We got to get Love his turkey leg. So I think they do it, but I think it's a very close game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Dolphins will be able to come out and put a little bit of more effort than the Packers expect. But I will say that the Dolphins can't play well in this cold environment. They haven't been able to. Tua hasn't been able to. So for that reason, we go the Packers here in this one. Tell you who you got.
Yeah, I mean, that was my exact thinking, right? The Miami Dolphins have struggled in the cold, whether it be Buffalo, whether it be KC in the playoffs. I just don't think they're built for this. I know, Tua and Waddle, they played in Tuscaloosa, but Tuscaloosa is not that cold, and Tyreek's got the experience in KC. But, when you're playing in Miami year-round, it's tough to then, go transfer that to 20-degree weather. So I'm going to go with Green Bay here too.
Yeah, so I think that one's just a pretty easy pick just based on records and the temperature. Next, we got the Black Friday game coming on. I think Amazon Prime. That's who it's with. You got the Raiders taking on the Chiefs, and this game was advertised to be really big, and it could end up being a good game because the Raiders always seem to play the Chiefs relatively well. But in this one, they're going to be down their starter Gardner Minshew, who got injured towards the end of the Broncos game last week. and I believe it's going to be Aiden O'Connell or Desmond Ritter starting this one. So we'll see who they actually decide upon. And the Chiefs, again, haven't proven themselves to be a huge, great team yet, and they've just won their 8th game winning by less than a touchdown against a poor Panthers team who have become a little bit scrappier over the last few weeks. But I think that Chiefs team just hasn't been able to just slugfest anyone. Like, they just haven't just been able to beat up on a team yet. And that says a lot about who they are. That being said, I'm going to go with the Chiefs here. The Raiders not having their starting quarterback and just not being a great team all around just doesn't show that they're going to beat this Chiefs team at home. So I'm going to go to the Chiefs here in this one. Ty, who you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just another one of those divisional battles, and I think it doesn't really matter whether it's O'Connell or Gardner. Obviously, Gardner's done for the year, but they were, kind of a coin flip at the beginning of the year. In these primetime games, the Raiders have been frisky against the Chiefs. If you remember last year, they beat them on Christmas. So, I can't. There's no way that I can will myself to pick the Raiders. I think it'll be a close game because we just haven't seen the Chiefs not have a close game. But I think Pacheco back is a huge one, right? They're going to situationally play him and Kareem Hunt, and I think in a game like this that could really propel them and push them over the edge. Just having two backs that can really pound the rock there for them. So I'm going with the Chiefs.
Hammer, who you got?
Yeah, I agree with Ty a lot of what he said. Last year on Christmas, that was a big surprise. Raiders always play them tough. It's the NFL. Anything can happen. The Raiders would be a fun pick. I'd take another leap in the standings, maybe to number 1. But they're so banged up. Chiefs are home. You got to go Kansas City.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me is like you're in the Chiefs' kingdom here. I just don't see the way that they're going to lose this one. Next, we got a divisional rival for you, Ty. Taking on the Falcons here, the Chargers against Atlanta. Who you got in this one, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, the big story here is no J.K. Dobbins. He kind of got banged up at the end of that game, knee injury. So we're probably going to see a lot of Gus Edwards. And while he is familiar with the system, with Greg Roman, he's a Baltimore guy, he just has struggled this year and he hasn't looked great. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some more of that Vidal guy and maybe Haskins as well. But, that Dobbins was the real chugger for them in the run game. So that's going to hurt. And then we saw Quentin Johnson kind of revert to his old self last week, 0 catches, dropping some clutch balls. So yeah, I think this is a tough time of the year for the Chargers, right? Because they have this game, they have Denver, they have Tampa, who's trending up, and then they have Kansas City. I think this is the time of the year that the Chargers start to trend downhill, right? Especially after that loss last week. That game was not as close in that second half as the score may have appeared, right? Derrick Henry really kind of ran away with that game for them. And I think Atlanta has the ability to do that with Bijan. I think Bijan, he's a dynamic back, pass and run. And then you bring in Algier, who's another guy who can be dynamic for them. The Falcons, they struggled against the like opponent with Denver. But Denver's defense is just a little bit different. And I don't know. I just think that was a team that was trending up. The Chargers kind of a team that's trending down. The Falcons, they're still fighting for that division, looking to cement themselves over Tampa. So I'm going to take the Falcons here. And maybe, again, it's divisional bias. But I look at what the Chargers have. They could be looking ahead from this game, right, at some of the tougher teams that they have to play, especially divisional games. And the Falcons just fighting for, every game counts for them. So I'm going to go with the Falcons here.
Hammer, who you got?
Yeah, this is a tricky pick. I'm going to go with the Chargers, though. I like them. I like what they bring. I think Gus could bring it up. I believe in Gus. Me and Jenks drafted Gus this year, hoping that he would be what he was last year, the touchdown machine. But he has not been. But now he's got, he's going to be the feature back most likely. And, I don't like Atlanta's pass rush at all. I think the Chargers are going to, Justin Herbert's going to be able to, really light up that defense. So I'm going with the Chargers. I like them. And I know they have a tough stretch after this. So I think they pick this one up. And then maybe it's downhill.
I'm going to go the Chargers here in this one as well. They're called a Foul Clowns for a reason. And this team, they're in a steep decline right now. And I think the Bucs, they're giving the Bucs a prime chance to win this division. I think they're going to hand it off to them. I just think the Falcons, Kirk Cousins has regressed a little bit the last couple of weeks. And I think their offense, while it does have solid weapons, they're not playing up to their best ability. And I think their defense is also really not very great. Their defensive line is really bad. And I think that helps the Chargers in this one too. So I'm going to go with Los Angeles in this one. Next, we got the Steelers taking on the Bengals. This is going to be a fun AFC North game with both teams trying to fight for playoff positioning, things like that. The Steelers trying not to lose another one after losing last week to the Browns, and the Bengals, just trying to fight their way, claw and fight their way into the playoffs. So, Hammer, who you got in this one, and what are your thoughts?
I'm going with Cincinnati. This is gonna, this is the Steelers, as we all know, when the schedules came out. This is the part of the schedule where the Steelers, really got a tough stretch. I thought, against Cleveland last week was really ugly. I get the conditions, this and that. Guess what? Cleveland was playing in them too. And they came out with the win. And I think this is the time the Steelers are going to start trending down. A couple years ago, where they started off like 8-0 or something like that too, they got to that week 12, week 13, started going down too. And I think it's kind of like the same team. Like that's just the feel I get. And as we know, Cincinnati not having the season they wanted, really talented on offense. That defense is not too good. But I mean, the Steelers don't really have that much firepower on offense, So I like Joe Burrow to get the better of that Pittsburgh defense at home. And yeah, it's gonna be a close game, but I'm going Cincinnati.
I'm gonna oppose you here with this. I'm gonna go with the Steelers here. I think Russ comes out, throws the ball to Pickens a lot more than he did last week. I think that was their game plan going into the game against Cleveland, and then the snow hit. I think their offense really just crumbled. I think weather and things like that really did impact that offensive game plan. And I think this week against the Bengals defense that isn't as good. And honestly, I think the kicker could end up costing the Bengals some more points here. So I'm going to go the Steelers beating the Bengals in Cincinnati. Who you got, Ty?
I'm going to oppose you, Jenks, and go with Hammer here. I just believe in Cincinnati. They have a lot of firepower, like Hammer was saying, and the Steelers just don't, right? And I think if the Steelers defense gives Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and those guys 1 second to pop, they're going to run with that, right? They're going to find the weakness in that Steelers defense and just run with it. And if that happens, Russell Wilson and this offense don't have the firepower to keep up with it. I think they're a team trending down. I think Russell Wilson's kind of coming back down to earth. And like Hammer said, right, the Browns were playing those conditions too, and Winston was throwing the ball, decently well to guys like Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. So I believe in Cincy here too, and I'm going to go with Cincy.
I will say though, you are a little bit of a Russ hater as well. Like let's put it out there.
But listen, but Cincy is right on Denver's ass in the wild card race,
no, they are,
right?
Yeah.
And so kind of picking them and rooting for them doesn't really do me much favor. So
no, I get it. No, I just think I love calling you out on the Russ hate because but you're also a big Joey Porter Jr. hater as well. We were talking in the group chat, and you were saying some bad things about Joey Porter Jr. So
he's gonna get exposed. Jamar Chase is gonna have a day against him.
Okay, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. He's the number one fantasy receiver for a reason. He's balling this year, so we'll see how he continues this season. Next, we got the Texans taking on the Jaguars, an AFC South battle with the Titans beating the Texans last week. Hammer, do you think the Texans regress again, or what do you think in this one? Who wins?
I'm going with Houston. The Jaguars are a mess. They're shot. They're in competition for the number 1 overall pick. But yeah, Houston's just not playing good football. I get they're banged up a little bit. Diggs is out for the year. Nico Collins is in the process of coming back. I think this is gonna be his third game back from that long period he was out. And CJ, that year 2 kind of regression. He hasn't looked to the part as that. We all kind of thought this guy was gonna be a top 5 QB coming in, and he has not looked the part. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Houston. But Houston.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with you here. I'm going to go Houston as well. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, although they have some players that are solid on the team themselves they're not led by a good coach. And I think Doug Peterson is going to be able to coach and pass this team. And I think Joe Mixon bounces back a little bit this week. That was big for them last week. He was kind of shut down, and that helped the Titans win that one. Ty, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Houston too, even though they're struggling, and we get Trevor Lawrence back and maybe even Tank Bigsby. But I think this isn't the time for Jacksonville to kind of show some pop. I think maybe this is the week that Doug Peterson gets fired. I don't think he'll make it through the whole rest of the season. And I think at that point in time, was really when this offense could maybe take a turn. Trevor's played pretty well, and maybe they start relying on Tank a little bit more because he's played well. But now is just not the time for a bad team like this to turn around. And Houston's just found a way to win, even if they haven't done it in a pretty way. So I'm going to go with the Texans.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm surprised Peterson's still around. I don't know if that's because they're trying to lean into like the tank a little bit. Because if you fire the coach, maybe you get like a interim like bump where you win a couple games. So we'll see what the Jaguars do after this week. Next, we got the Cardinals taking on the Vikings. Ty, I know you love the Cardinals for being
They let you guys down last week. I got that win. Seattle, let's go.
They did let us down last week, but they're taking on a Vikings team who has regressed a little bit. What are your thoughts on this one? Can the Cardinals pull this one out?
Yeah, it was really disappointing because Kyler's having a really, really good year, and to see him kind of struggle last week as much as he did was disappointing. You know, that interception was just a bad play. I mean, a great play by Seattle. You know, Sean Witherspoon really, you know, making a good play there, but or excuse me, Devin Witherspoon. But you know, it was just not a promising week for the Cardinals, and it doesn't get any easier playing an even better defense this week with Minnesota. I know offensively. The Vikings have you know kind of fallen off a bit, and Darnold's been banged up, but you know maybe we see Danny Dimes if Darnold gets banged up again. But you know, offensively they were not that bad last week. It was really just Jettis, you know, didn't really do much. But if you look around the whole rest of the offense, Addison had a game, Jones had a game, Hawkinson had a game, right? And it was a divisional game, so it was another divisional game, so tough one. But you know, I just don't think this is. I think Kyler could have a good game and a bounce back game. Even if it's not, you know, a crazy game because he is playing good defense, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to keep up with, you know, the weapons that Minnesota has and the way that their defense is playing. I mean, we talk about them falling off. They're 9-2 and they're a game away from being the number 1 seed in the NFC. So, you know, they beat the Lions once and they're right there. So they find a way to win. And, you know, I just really believe in Minnesota and Brian Flores and what he's doing there. So I'm going to go with the Vikings here.
Okay. Hammer, who you got?
Well, I don't believe in Minnesota. I think they're due for a loss. I'm going with Arizona, baby. Arizona, let's go. Stand up. Red Sea.
Just like straight up. Go Seattle. See how the Cardinals suck, and now it's
yeah. You guys are gonna pick Minnesota, and I'm gonna pick Arizona. I said you guys are gonna pick Minnesota, and I'm gonna pick Arizona, and they're gonna win.
Every week we pick Arizona, he's going to go against us, and every week we pick the other team, he's going to take Arizona.
Yeah, so I'm going Arizona. I think Minnesota. I think they're due for a loss. You know, Green Bay's got to jump them somehow.
Yeah, right. This is divisional bias. That's crazy.
There's a little bit of I just picking against the Vikings.
No, I mean Arizona. You know, they just lost a tough one to Seattle, big division game, which now puts them number 2. I think that was a huge wake up call. I think Kyler Murray's going to get the boys going. Walk into Minnesota and say, "Give me Danny Dimes," because this guy sucks.
All right, Hammer. I'll let you believe. I'm going to go with the Vikings here in this one. I think Jordan Addison has been getting more involved for them, and I think it's time that they blend Jordan Addison as well as Justin Jefferson both into the mix in one game, and I think they come out with the win in Minnesota. Next, we got the Colts taking on the Patriots here in this one. Hammer, this is a little bit of a rough game for all of us to watch. I don't think anyone's really going to be watching this one, but who you got in this one?
Yeah, I don't know. This one was kind of tricky to pick, but I'm going to go with the Colts. I think they got more to play for. They're still in that playoff wild card chase. I mean, look at their next 5. They got the Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Giants, and Jags. I mean, you can go 4-1 right there, and you could be 9-8 and maybe get in the playoffs. So I think they're playing for more, and that's really it, to be honest. I don't even think they're playing better than New England. And New England's been better, you know, with Drake May at the helm. They've been in close games every week almost, except for last week against Miami. I think it's a close game, but I'm good with the Colts.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Colts here as well. I think Anthony Richardson will be able to run the ball a little bit in this. Like, we saw him kind of get a little bit better, even though he didn't miss. I believe it was, I want to say it was Pierce over on a crosser route for a first down early in the game. Missed him pretty wide open. And he's made mistakes like that all season when he's starting, but he makes plays to make up for it where he's running the ball. So I think he'll be able to do that this week a little bit more and get the Colts to win, even though it might be an ugly or close game. Ty, who you got?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Hammer, right? They do have an easy schedule coming up, minus the Broncos game. But this game will really tell us like what we should expect from them against teams like the Titans. And Drake May's played well, but the rest of the team is pretty bad. And like you said, Colts team is fighting for a playoff spot. These are the types of games that you have to take care of. So I'm going to go with the Colts just simply because they have to take care of this game. But, you never know where you're going to get with AR. I mean, I know he's been better the past couple weeks, but just a tough one.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say too is they played the Detroit last week and they lost 24-6. And then you look at it in like 24-6, then it's a bad loss. But the way Detroit's playing, it's like that's not that bad of a loss. 2 scores, I don't know. It's kind of ugly the whole time. It was like 17-6. I don't know. Just want to point that out. Like,
No,
like
the Lions haven't
that's how
beaten
good
them.
the Lions are too. It's like you look at that and like, whoa, they kind of held up with them a little bit.
Yeah. Well, next we got the Seahawks taking on the Jets. The Jets, again, just not a good team all around. Aaron Rodgers, came over there. Maybe it was the solution, and he hasn't been. Like the team is falling apart. They get Devontae, they somehow suck even more. It's just the team is in football hell. On the other side, you got the Seahawks, who just beat the Cardinals, and it seemed to be easy for them. Like it wasn't the high score, like it wasn't a huge point differential, but they made it look easy beating the Cardinals. And I think that was because they solved Kyler Murray a little bit, but I think they should be able to beat the Jets here in this one. And I'm just going to keep it quick because I want to say I'm going to pick the Seahawks, but I have a question. Do you guys think JSN or DK Metcalf is the true wide receiver one for this team in Seattle?
I mean, I'm going to say JSN. I think he has at least, I don't know, he has the higher ceiling than DK. I mean, we saw what he could do at Ohio State, and he was an absolute dog there. I just remember the Rose Bowl game against Utah where he really had his coming out party. So I think he's the higher ceiling, but I mean, it's hard to tell, right? Because DK's been hurt and JSN had some big games, and but I think the way that things are trending, JSN seems to be that go-to guy for Geno when he needs some of those clutch third down plays and stuff like that. Whereas DK is more of an explosive guy, can break free and or make play in the end zone on a jump ball. But I really think it is JSN.
Him, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Ty. I think he definitely has the higher ceiling, but I'll say that DK is still number one. He's been the number one in Seattle for the past couple of years now, and JSN strung together, a couple of good games, has had a pretty good season, and I think it's his mantle to take. But I think right now, I think you still got to go with DK.
Yeah, and I think there is a middle ground to it because I think it depends on what you're looking for. Like you said, Ty, more explosive DK. So it depends on the game in the game situation, what they need. I think they're both kind of, if you put JSN on a different team, he could be a receiver one. If you put DK on a different team, he could be a receiver one. So they got a solid situation in Seattle. But I will say this also, who do you guys got in this one? I know I got away from that. Who you guys picking?
Yeah, I'm going to oppose you here. I'm going to go with the Jets. I think this is the week that, the Jets play frisky football and kind of beat up on a team, not beat up in a bad way, but, they get this win over Seattle because Seattle, again, we talked about this last week. I never know what I'm going to get with them. And they had a good win last week, right? But simply because Kyler just didn't play well, in my opinion. It wasn't like a blowout win or anything like that. I think the Jets have enough firepower. It really does depend, I guess, if Breece Hall can go. I know he's questionable right now, but they do have Braylon Allen too, who's been pretty good so far this season. I just think the Jets are a frisky team, right? They have all the talent in the world, and you just never know what you're going to get with them. And I think at some point they got to get wins, right? They're 3-8 or something like that, 3-7. Maybe this is the week that they get that fourth one, and maybe this is the win that propels me above you in the rankings. So
I respect it. You got to get that. Got to get that win somehow. What do you think, Hammer?
I picked the Jets so many times this year. They're probably the reason why I'm not in number one place. So I'm gonna go with Seattle. Seattle just won 2 straight against 2 division opponents. They're feeling themselves. They're like, we're in control. We're playing good football. And yeah, they are. They're playing better football than the Jets. I think 31 teams are playing better football than the Jets. So I'm gonna go with Seattle. I want to pick the Jets. I'm rooting for them, but I'm gonna go Seattle. I just can't. Bad.
All right. Anyways, next we're going into the Tennessee Titans taking on the Commanders. This is a more interesting game based on last week's results than it was in prior weeks. Hammer, who do you got in this one, and what are your thoughts?
Well, let me ask you this: what's the Titans' record?
I don't even know off the top of my head. They're what, 3-8, 2-8? No, 3-8 with the win last week. 3-8, yeah.
So I'm gonna go with the Commanders because the Commanders beat up on the bad teams and lose to the good teams. I'm gonna go with the Commanders. The bounce back, get in the win column is gonna put them 8-5. Keep them in that wild card picture. The Titans, had a big upset last week, but again, that team that they played in Houston, is not playing good football either. I'm gonna go with the Commanders. And I just made a big trade. Trade deadline was today. One of my leagues for Scary Terry. He's been going off. So
I mean, I will say
keep it up.
he had 4.6 points before that one play last week. So hopefully he gets a few more big plays in the rest of the season. Ty, what are your thoughts on this game? Who you got?
Yeah, Titans, despite their record as of late, have been frisky. Like Will Levis, I think in that draft class since October it is, or maybe it's just November, has the highest QBR in that draft class. Tony Pollard is on pace for the most rushing yards he's had in his career. I think it's 12 something. So on paper, if you just look at the records here, right, you would say the Commanders are the better team. But if you look at the way these two teams are trending, I'm going to go with the Titans here. A wild pick, but I think Jaden is regressing, and I think teams are kind of starting to figure out what he does well and how they can stop that. 2 picks last week. I know one of them was on Hail Mary, but still, right? Just not a great game from him against a bad Dallas Cowboys team. It's just, I don't know. I think Eckler might be out in this game too. So they're running, and B Rob is banged up. So if they just have to go with McNichols, things get a lot tougher for them. And Jaden's not even looking at Terry anymore. Noah Brown has been their leading guy with targets. It's just, I don't know, man. This team, I can never figure out the Commanders because I really thought they were going to be maybe a contender to be the 1 seed in the NFC. And they've just kind of, Jaden's kind of regressed. I think that the Titans, they're a frisky team. They played frisky against the Houston Texans, and Will Levis and Tony Pollard. I just, I think they can get this offense rolling.
Yeah, I was tempted to pick the Titans as well. I think the Commanders will have Brian Robinson, so I think he'll be able to be back. And that was a big piece of them losing last week, was losing him early in the game. So I'm going to go the Commanders here in this one. I'm not extremely confident in this pick. Like you said, they have regressed, and Titans have a little bit of momentum after beating the Texans. So I think it will be a good game to watch, but I'm going to go with the Commanders here to win. Anyways, next we got an NFC South battle between the Buccaneers, who are getting healthy and starting to heat back up, and the Panthers. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, the Panthers are playing really, really well, right? Bryce Young has kind of gotten over a bit of a hump. They have Thielen back. They have, I think, unfortunately, they're going to be without Jatavian Sanders after he had that concussion. But, Chuba's running the ball well. Legette's really starting to step up. They're playing really, really good football. And to play the way that they did against the Chiefs last week and give themselves a chance to win that game was very, very impressive. The problem is they're kind of running into a team that is, on the incline here, kind of been a buzzsaw. I know they beat up on a bad Giants team last week, right? But, the big story was, their running game really, really was dominant with 3 backs, Tucker, White, and Bucky. I mean, Bucky had a hell of a day receiving and rushing. And just having Mike Evans back the past couple weeks has been huge for them. He's just a guy that you can always go to, always rely on. He plays better in some of these divisional games, I feel like, too. So, it's just, I believe in what Baker's rolling with, and I believe in Tampa's offense more than I believe in the Panthers. I know that they showed promise with Bryce, but I just don't think that they can keep up with what Tampa's offense can do. So I'm going to go with Tampa here.
Hammer, who you got?
Yeah, I like Tampa too. They got healthy. They got Evans back. I think they get the winning streak to 2. They were playing really good football early in the season when they were healthy, and they don't. Godwin's out for the year, but they're starting to get some pieces back, like Evans live in fantasy, and I think they're going to be too explosive for Carolina to stop.
Yeah, I think that Mike Evans piece is really big, and Ty, you highlighted the 3-headed monster they got at running back right now. When Sean Tucker, when I was watching his tape for college, I thought he was going to be really good. And Hammer, I think you were the one who scouted Bucky Irving, and you thought he was going to be pretty good as well. So they got a solid running game, and Mike Evans coming back is huge for them. I think that's a huge swing. That's all they need. I think the Bucs win this one, and possibly the division, depending on how they play out the rest of the season. Next, we got my Saints taking on the Rams in New Orleans. And this is a fun game for both teams. The Rams looking to bounce back from a bad loss. And then the Saints just looking to establish themselves as actually being back with Darren Rizzi. And I think Darren Rizzi has the chance to just establish himself in the New Orleans community and the to the owner, to Gail Benson, just saying like, hey, I'm a good coach. I got this team on a roll, and I got like an actual shot at being a head coach here. And I think the Saints, the key of this game is being able to run the ball like the Eagles did with Saquon Barkley. You might be down Eric McCoy again this week. He didn't practice yesterday, but we'll see if he's able to practice the rest of the week, or if they just decide to play him without any practice, because he's done that before. So I think Eric McCoy being back is a real key in this game. If he is in, I think the Saints should be able to win. And if he's not, it's going to be a lot tougher. And then the other key is just locking down these these receivers. Saints are down their top 2 corners this season. And with Puka and Cooper Kupp both balling right now, it's a tough thing for the Saints defense to do. So I don't know if they'll be able to do that. But Darren Rizzi's got a heater going in New Orleans. It's at home in the Superdome. Crowd's going to be going nuts after the bye week. You deprive us Saints fans of Saints football for a week, and we get back and we're ready to go. So for that reason, I'm going to pick the Saints here in the Superdome, beating the Rams. Alvin Kamara having a big game. Hammer and I have him in a fantasy, so at least 20 points there. I'm going to go to the Saints here. Ty, who you got?
Yeah, I mean, I have Kamara in fantasy too, so I think, I'm rooting for him. I think he can have a big day. But I think the big differential between what we saw with Philly last week and what we'll see with New Orleans this week is, right, both great backs, but New Orleans doesn't have a difference maker on the outside like A.J. Brown. I mean, A.J. Brown is like top 10 receiving yards, and he's only played 8 games, which is like 3 less than everyone else, which just insane, right? You can just chuck it up to him and expect him to make a play. He gets open all the time, right? Like, they didn't even have Devonta, and he was out there playing, his ass off, which makes you not be able to stack the box as much against a guy like Saquon, which was what teams were able to do against him when he was in New York. So I think maybe the Rams can stack the box a little bit more against Kamara. Fisk and Verse, they have been a problem for teams this year, especially if they don't have McCoy. I think Fisk on the interior will be a little bit of more of a problem. But the biggest part of all of this, despite not having a big weapon on the outside, is the 2 corners. Down your 2 corners against 2 of the better receivers in football. Kupp and Puka are a problem, but not even outside of them. I mean, Demarcus Robinson's played really well. Tutu's shown some flashes at times. So I think the Rams offense is very, very explosive, and that they're going to be able to win this game for
Ty. I think you're forgetting about the number 1 receiver we got right now is in MVS.
Bro,
a big play guy right now.
Don't talk about MVS in the same breath as AJ Brown. I mean, that might be the craziest thing.
I mean, numbers wise right now, the guy's on a heater, but
put it out, and you will get so many hate comments from Eagles fans.
No, obviously he's not in the same place, but he fits the scheme well, and Derek Carr somehow, like, MVS plays like shit with Aaron Rodgers, plays like shit with Patrick Mahomes, and then Derek Carr is somehow the saving grace for the guy. And I think that's a really interesting conversation to have for another day.
Playing the Browns.
Yeah. We played the Falcons a week before that.
Oh yeah, Swiss cheese secondary. Denver put up 38 on him.
I'm just saying. No one expected MVS to do what he's doing, but I just think it's funny that he's actually doing solid. I don't think he is as good as AJ Brown or these other receiver ones, but I just think it's a funny thing to discuss. Anyways, Hammer, who you got in this one?
I've watched MVS for 4 years. He's gonna come down to earth. He's a journeyman for a reason. I'm going with the Rams too. I agree with what Ty said. I think they're going to sell out to stop number 41. I think they're the better team. I think they're better coached. I think they're playing for more. That NFC West is wide open.
Yeah.
So, a big NFC win can go a long way. So I'm going with the Rams.
I will say that if the Titans beat the Commanders this week, the NFC wild card spot opens up a lot for the
that 7th spot
and
opens
the Rams
up a lot.
Too. Like,
that's so that would, I think I don't want to be cocky, but I think in the NFC, I think there's 4 spots locked up guaranteed, right? It's the Eagles, it's the Lions, and then I think Minnesota and Green Bay are locked in the 2 wild cards.
Yeah.
To me, right? And then the 2 division winners are random in that 7th. It is the Commanders right now with like a 2-game lead, but they haven't been playing good. If they drop one, then it's wide open. Yeah, but I mean, like, when's the last time we've seen a playoffs like this? Like week 13, you already got like 4 teams kind of locked in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of teams that have the ability to clinch this week too. I think Buffalo does. I think KC does. Detroit does. I think even Philly might have the chance to clinch. So a lot of teams with the ability to clinch.
It really shows the difference between like there's such a big gap between the good teams and bad teams this year, you know.
And I think that's the crazy thing because we were discussing like early in the season, we were like, this is any given week anyone can win, and it started to kind of weed out the pack a little bit, the top teams. But
I think it's the top of the pack that any given week they have beat each other, right? I mean, if you look at the AFC, it seems like those top 7 are pretty much locked in. Like it's going to be hard for Miami or Cincy or the Colts to really catch up on Denver or any of the AFC North teams or anything like that. But it was like the Ravens beating up on the Steelers and maybe the Steelers Bengals game. I think it's Denver Chiefs, right? It was a lot of the top dogs beating the top dogs. I don't think besides the Browns game, we haven't seen too many of those like bad. And again, that's another divisional matchup, right? So I don't know. I think a lot of these teams are looking to lock up late in the season, and there's not much wiggle room besides the NFC, those couple spots.
Yeah, but it is setting us up for a fun last few weeks playoff wise. I think there's a lot of things that could happen and go down.
Yeah.
Anyways, next we got the Eagles taking on the Ravens. This is a fun one for both teams and playoff implications. Ty, who you got in this one, and what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game, right? Because on paper, right, you think we would just get Saquon versus Derrick Henry, and I'm guaranteeing you we're going to get Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts throwing the ball like 40 times for some reason. I don't know why. I just have a bad feeling that Saquon and Derrick Henry are going to have like 10 carries, and this won't be as explosive and a fun game. But regardless, right, whatever the game plans up being, I mean, just two absolute juggernauts. But when it comes down to it at the end of the day, I think because the offenses are so similar, they're both like, have a lot of firepower. We have to start to look at the defenses. And, Baltimore's defense has struggled at times. They haven't been the Baltimore defense that we expect from the, in the past. And they pretty much returned their entire same unit from last year, besides like Patrick Queen. And they are way, way worse. I think they might get Michael Pierce back this week. I think I just saw that he might be activated from IR. So that's helpful to stop the run. But Philly's defense has played really, really well. They've been a problem. That Cooper DeJean, since he's been inputted into that slot, he's been a white boy stand up. He's been a problem. So and he did really well against Cooper Kupp last week. And the Ravens don't. Zay is a good receiver. He's underutilized, and I don't think he's as good as Cooper Kupp is, obviously. So I believe in Philly's defense and Vic Fangio to kind of give Baltimore a problem, because Baltimore, I mean, if we're even go back to the offenses, right? I said they're both, a lot of firepower, pretty evenly matched. Who's been the most inconsistent? And it's been Baltimore's offense, right? They played like shit against bad teams, the Raiders and stuff like that. And I mean, that I heard the stat the other day on the McAfee show, like the Ravens are undefeated when they give Derrick Henry 20 carries, but you don't know if they're actually going to give him 20 carries. And in a game like this, I just feel like the script is going to end up being Lamar throwing the ball a lot. I think they're going to try to keep up in a back and forth battle instead of just grinding the ball out, trusting that you can run the ball, because we saw this against Pittsburgh, right? In the fourth quarter, it was a close game, and instead of giving the ball to Derrick Henry, they were just throwing the ball over the field.
Yeah,
it just didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. I don't trust Todd Monken, so and I trust Vic Fangio, another former Bronco guy, bad head coach, but really good defensive coordinator. So I'm going to go with Philly here.
Hammer, who you got?
Yeah, that last point was exactly what I was going to say. I mean, these two offenses, you look on paper, explosive, but which one do you trust more? And like, it's Philly. It's Philly. Saquon's been unbelievable. The passing attack, they're going to get Devontae Smith back. And then you look at the two defenses, and it's like, yeah, I trust Philly a little bit more. I like that secondary a little bit more. Baltimore was unbelievable last year on defense, and it just has not been the same ever since McDonald left. The tackling, the secondary, it hasn't been the same. So I'm going to go with Philly.
You guys made it tough on me. I want to go with the Eagles here, but with both of you guys taking the Eagles, I'm going to believe in the Ravens here. I think Derrick Henry will have a solid game. Even though Jalen Carter has been a force on that interior and has been shutting people down, Zach Bond as a linebacker has been one of the top-ranked linebackers, and of course the Saints let him walk, and now he's balling out. But I think this Ravens team, their defense did look better last week, and I believe that Zay Flowers maybe bounces back this week. They'll get, I mean, Bateman's had a solid year, which not a lot of people expected. Nelson Aguilar has been a little bit more involved. And so hopefully they balance the offense out a little bit more and can win this one. I will say I'm not going to touch either Saquon or Derrick Henry anytime touchdowns because, like you said, Ty, this could end up being a tush push and Lamar Jackson scramble kind of touchdown kind of game. So I won't touch either of those. And then final note, we did the whole white boys stand up and then that could have been a really bad look. I will say the reason we say that is because all three of us are white guys playing defense. So it was like it's very rare two white DBs in the podcast at once. That's all we're discussing.
Exciting whites.
Yeah, exciting whites. That's all it is. No worries. Anyways, next we got Sunday Night Football. We got the 49ers taking on the Bills. More exciting whites in this game. I'll highlight that real quick. Anyways, Hammer, what are your thoughts on this one and who you got in this one?
Yeah, so Adam Schefter just tweeted that Brock Purdy was limited today at practice. Bosa and Trent Williams did not practice. It's just like you think San Fran's going to pick it back up and fight and, get that last wild card or even win the division because they're still in it. Like you're waiting for this team to emerge because they've just been so consistent and so good these past 4 years since 2019. I just don't think it's the year. I just don't think it's going to happen. This San Fran team, I think they played 12 or 16 games in the playoffs since 2019. I mean, that's basically like another season. I think, the core of this team, they've played a lot of football. I think they're beat. I think they're just, physically and mentally just like shot and beat. And I just think this might be the last couple of games with this core. And then maybe they move on from Debo. Trent Williams, I think he's probably got another year or two. You got to make a decision. You got to pay Purdy, this and that. So I think this is like the end of an era. And I think Sunday night is like the nail in the coffin for the season for San Fran. I'm going to go with Buffalo and the conditions too. It's supposed to be like a snowstorm too on Sunday night. So I'm going Buffalo.
Yeah, if it's a snow game, Buffalo Bills fans are already going to be going crazy. There might be a few snowballs being thrown on the field, things like that. Bills fans are wild. And I think if the 49ers are already down, if they're down Brock Purdy, it's a loss no matter what. If you have Brock Purdy, I still think they lose this game, but it's a little bit closer. And Deebo Samuel has truly regressed this year. And we saw that last week with a drop that led to a pick. And he just hasn't been himself. So I think the Bills can win this one as well. Yeah, Hammer, throw up the X. I know you love the new pick that the Giants just let walk for whatever reason. He's been huge for you guys. Ty, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I mean, if it ends up being a snow game, right, like Josh Allen, James Cook, toting the ball, maybe some Ray Davis, right, that's just who you got to trust, right? Even if they had Purdy, they just had McCaffrey to run the ball, and you can kind of stack the box against them. Maybe Kittle would make some plays, but Debo hasn't been the same, and Pearsall hasn't bounced out, hasn't shown out really, and Juwan Jennings has had a pretty good season, but it's just a bunch of guys that have been kind of underwhelming. Even CMC since he's been back, very, very underwhelming. Like Kittle's been the only true standout, but not even. I mean, I was listening to the McAfee show yesterday. It's not even the offense right at this point in time, right? It is that defense. That defense does not look as explosive as they have in the past. Their whole defensive line, Bosa's banged up. Everyone's different. Like Leonard Floyd, a lot. They just don't have the Buckner, the Arik Armstead, the Chase Young, a lot of these guys that they had in the past that could be difference makers alongside Bosa. They're still without Greenlaw, who's a huge difference maker for them. They just across the board have not looked explosive on defense, and that is not good against a guy like Josh Allen. No matter who he has on his offense, he makes plays with them. So I think, conditions or no conditions, Josh Allen's going to be a problem for this defense that has not been the defense of the past. So I'm going to go with Buffalo as well.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that the Bills in at a home game with snow on the ground, it's a scary sight for a lot of teams, except for Joe Burrow and the Bengals in the playoffs. So, anyways, next we got Monday Night Football. Ty, it's a big game for you just because like you guys got to continue the streak going. You got the Browns taking on the Broncos. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, Monday Night Football. Nice little break here. Getting the extra day off. Denver, they've played really well as of late, but the one area that they have really struggled in is running the football. They gave Estime the kind of the lead back against Kansas City, and he played well. And then next week, in a weird fashion, it was back to Javonte, and he played well. And then we went with Javonte again this past week, and he had 8 carries for -2 yards. So I'm just like, when is Sean Payton finally going to trust Audric Estime to just give him the ball and let him rock? I mean, he's a huge dude. And the same exact plays, right? You watch Javonte run one play, he gets stuffed at the line. Similar look on the front, blocking scheme, play design. Audric Estime at least gets 3 yards out of it, right? He's averaging like 5 yards a carry. So it's really, really hard for me right now, just watching the Denver Broncos run the football, because it's just like, it is just stagnant, and it's like watching molasses. Like it's
Yeah.
terrible. But on the flip side, right, Denver's passing game is playing
Cortland.
lights out right now. Cortland Sutton's playing really well, but you got to expect that from him. Vele's the big one, right? Vele's been playing really, really well. Mims as a receiving back out of the backfield has started to blossom. And then obviously the Denver defense is just rolling, right? If we can have Zach Allen back, and hopefully Riley Moss is healthy at full strength, or even last week, right? We didn't have both of them and still really balled out. So, Denver's defense has been a problem for a lot of teams this year. I think there's no way that Jameis Winston plays back-to-back weeks of good football. He's just never been able to do that. So I think Denver's defense will be able to kind of box him in, and I think Bo Nix in this passing game will be able to put up some points against the Browns. But until Javonte Williams stops running the football, I love Javonte, but he's a free agent after this year. We should let him walk, and we should just roll with Estime. Because he's been in the passing game, he's been a weapon too. So, I don't know. That's just my thoughts. I think we need to get Estime more involved, but I trust everything else has looked really, really good.
I will say I think Jameis can have back-to-back weeks that are solid. We saw it with the Saints a few years back under Sean Payton, but he's
not everything's about you. Stop going back to the Saints.
It's always about the Saints.
He's a little bit of a better coach for Jameis, obviously. I think Jameis is throwing the ball around a little bit too much for Cleveland. And we saw that with his pick last week. Like it's a snow game, and they started to get throwing the ball all over the place and some really crazy throws. So
there's no reason they should have won last week, right? So there's no reason to think that they'll do that 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I'm going to go with the Broncos here. I think the Broncos defense, as you said, if Riley Moss is back, another exciting white, maybe he makes a few big plays. So I think the Broncos should be able to handle this one. But Hammer, who do you got?
I'm going to go with the Broncos as well. Jameis is not consistent, and I'm excited for this game because I haven't really watched Denver a lot this year. So Monday night, only game on TV. I'll get to sit back and watch some Bo Nix.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for our Week 13 picks. There's no teams on bye, so this is a long slate to break down. Quick question before we end the episode. Who are your guys' pick for MVP at this moment in time? Do we got Lamar, Josh Allen, Saquon, or another player off the top of your head?
I mean, if I had to pick an MVP, right, I personally think neither of these guys will win it. It's Burrow or Saquon. Burrow won't win it because his team's bad, and Saquon won't win it because he's a running back. Like, it's going to end up probably being Lamar or Josh Allen because their teams are both really good, and both aren't really turning the ball over, scoring a lot of touchdowns. But I really think that if we're going to go with a winning team, right, take Joe Burrow out of it, I think it should be Saquon. He's been a true difference maker for that team, really propelled them. A team in the past that has had pretty good running backs, but they have not had an explosive back like this, and he adds another layer to that offense. I would say it should be Saquon, but it won't be.
Yeah, I mean, this MVP award, me and Jakes talked about it last year. It just, it's going to go to a QB with a winning record that's got good numbers. It's not going to go to the most valuable player who changed this team, this and that. Who should be the MVP? It's Xavier McKinney. It's simple. He changed the defense, the Packers.
That is a wild take from left field.
No. But, I think it's going to be Josh Allen, and I think Lamar's right on his tail, and Saquon is right there too. He could go get 2K yards and, get those touchdowns up too. And, I think those are your top three, but right now I'm going to go Josh Allen.
Yeah, I'm going to go Josh Allen as well. I think he'll end up winning it just if the Bills continue, obviously, what they're doing. And I think Saquon is the runner-up right now, and he's on pace. In his 17-game pace, he's on pace to break both the rushing yards record and the total yards in his season record. So if he can do both of those, he should be the surefire MVP. But like you guys both said, quarterbacks are usually going to win this award, which is messed up. They should just name it the best quarterback in the league at that point, if that's what we're going to do. So we'll see what the NFL decides. But I think all of those picks are solid picks, except for Xavier McKinney. That one just
Yeah,
I know
he
you're
could win
joking.
defensive.
I'm
player
not
of
the
the year.
one that compared MVS and
He could
AJ
win
Brown.
defensive pick of the year or defensive player of the year, though. I'll give you that.
He
Hammer.
could. He could. He won't though. He
Sound
won't.
off in the comments about the MVS versus AJ Brown debate.
Crazy.
There
It
was no
nuts.
debate.
Play it back. Play it
Did you
back.
see my
The
face?
audio was like,
I'm
Watch,
literally sitting there like,
watch this back after.
I'm
and
literally
just think
sitting
about
there
that.
like smiling, like, oh, MVS. What about him? Like it was not. It was so unserious.
you were like talking about number one receivers. MVS over here with the Saints. He can open up the game. Light box against the Saints. Are you kidding me? We got MVS.
MVS over here is gonna run a. He's running a deep cross, and he's gonna burn
my
everyone.
God,
It's possible.
All right, end the
Derek
episode.
Derek Carr.
People
flamed
don't
our
want it. People don't want to hear about Derek Carr to
Hey,
MVS.
every once in a while, Derek Carr will hit you with that nice little off base jumping through it forward. Like
yeah, and that's
deep
why
forward.
Olave's in a fucking,
then-
in a
and then,
hospital right now.
And then the next
Olave's
week
been
he'll
in the
throw a
hospital
hospital ball.
past month.
And then the next week he'll just kill his wide receiver one. So again, never know what you're gonna get with Derek Carr or MVS. Like you said, Hammer, he could just fall off the face of the earth, drop a few balls, and then just do zero. Like have a Quentin Johnson kind of game. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, we're at a 56-minute mark. We're getting into a long episode territory. Ty, what are your closing thoughts for this week?
Yeah, I mean, just solidifying that Bo Nix will be Offensive Rookie of the Year, and let's get some votes for Jonah Ellis, Defensive Rookie of the Year as well. He's kind of closing in on Jared Verse and Braden Fisk in the sacks, and he's only basically a rotational player, and he's increasingly getting more reps with Baron Browning gone. So, yeah, let's get some votes for Jonah Ellis, Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Okay. Hammer, what are your closing thoughts?
I'd say for week 13, it's definitely a way better slate of games than last week. I think Thursday's Thanksgiving games on. I think Thursday night, it's going to be a good game between Miami and the Packers. 1 o'clock, you got Arizona, Minnesota, Steelers, Bengals, Chargers, Atlanta's going to be good. 4 o'clock, you got Eagles, Ravens, and then you got MVS against AJ Brown. Sunday night, you got the Niners fighting for their lives, and then on Monday night you get to watch the rookie Bo Nix. So I'm excited for this week's games, and go Pack go.
Yeah, I will say every single game except for the Cowboys Giants game has playoff implications here, so it'll be a fun week of watching football. Anyways, that'll do it for this episode, breaking down week 13. As always, you guys know where to find us on socials at Jenks Island and anywhere you get your podcast at the Jenks Island Podcast. We will see you guys next week.